LGR, London Greek Radio. On FM, on digital radio, on your mobile and online. This is London Greek Radio.
Hello and welcome to All About Autism, our monthly charity show here on London Greek Radio, aimed at helping us to understand autism better so that together we can create a better society for autistic people and the whole autism community. My name is Dr. Chris Papadopoulos and I'll be your host up until 8 p.m. I'm the father of 2 autistic children and I'm the founder and lead of the London Autism Group charity. Today, as always, I'm joined by my lovely 2 co-hosts and charity volunteers, Sofia Christofi, who is herself autistic, and also Eli Kolazzi, a parent of a young autistic child. How are you today, guys?
Good. Yeah, we're good. Good to be back again.
Very good, very good. So, Sophia, I hear it is your birthday on Monday. How are you feeling about that? And happy birthday in advance.
Thank you.
What are you doing? Anything nice?
We're having a barbecue.
Oh, very good, very good. And what presents are you hoping for, Sophia?
just books would be great.
All right. So if anybody's listening and want to send Sophia any books, send them over. So I'm also delighted that today we have a wonderful, wonderful guest in the studio here with us this evening, Kathleen Tripp. Kathleen was an autism advisory teacher for many years and has many, many years of experience in teaching in special educational needs, and she is currently working as a lecturer in special educational needs and disabilities and inclusion at the University of Hertfordshire. Amazing to have you join us. Thank you, Kathleen. Would you mind just briefly telling us a little bit about yourself so that our lovely listeners just can get a bit of a sense about you?
Oh, thank you, Dr. Chris. I am originally from St. Louis, as you can tell by my accent, in the US. However, I came over in 1990. That was my first teaching job after university. And prior to that, I got a teacher training degree from the Truman State University in Missouri. And while I was doing that, I worked at a residential home for autistic children, and that's really where I got into having a big desire to support children with special educational needs, but in particular autistic children.
So you've been here since 1990?
Yes.
Wow, and you've still got that wonderful accent.
I still do.
You've still got it, right.
I still got it.
And you're from, I understand, Missouri in St. Louis, right?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right, fantastic. Well, it's great to have you here with us, and because of your experience in educational needs, particularly when it comes to autistic children, you know, we're going to obviously learn a lot about that today from you and your experience. It's great to have you. So, as listeners may know, on each monthly episode, we focus on a different topic connected to autism. And for today's show, we'll be focusing on the topic of autism in inclusion and accessibility in higher education, and in particular focusing on universities. So, you know, the issues around inclusion and accessibility in universities. So I think this is a topic that a lot of people will connect with and resonate and think about. So hopefully it's of use. But as always, we do welcome questions or points of view from our listeners. So if you've got anything you'd like to ask or share that we can read out and discuss live on air, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. You can just text us at 0737 661 1033. That's 0737 661 1033. Or you can email us at studio@lgr.co.uk. That's studio@lgr.co.uk. We'd really love to hear from you, and we always would value your input. So, over to you, Sophia.
Thank you. Going to university was an important part of my development and career progression, but the transition from school to university was quite difficult. Kathleen, can you tell us in your experience how we can manage these transitions and why support is so important during these times?
I think as we all know, transitions of any kind are hugely often difficult for autistic people or autistic children. So the major way that we can do it is just through planning. Not the most exciting answer, I know, but hugely simple way to think about it, I think. So I would have a really strong induction plan. So I would really want you to be going and getting to know your way around campus if you have decided on a university. But before you even go to university, make sure that you visit whatever universities you're considering, and get a feeling and a sense from the actual program that you want to study. Because as we know, different programs operate very differently. So I would be looking for individual support. So things like a peer mentoring scheme, any sort of individualized student support, and making sure that any of this kind of individualized study support, peer support, whatever it is, that it actually starts before the first day of class rather than on that first day of class. And I'd also be really linking very strongly with your disability support services. Again, I would expect them to be interviewing you, meeting with you, talking to you about what support they're going to offer. Also, like on a little practical note, the Brain in Hand app, or there's many, many apps actually that you can get now that help you plan your routes to school, that help you with your scheduling, offer lots of support and timetabling. So these are just a few kind of ideas that I would suggest. But Sophia, did you think anything helped you with transition, or?
Definitely the planning was really important. So I started planning my transition to university about 2 years before I was actually going to go. So right at the start of A-levels, I had decided that I'd like to do psychology and that I wanted to do it at the University of Hertfordshire. So with my school, we started to visit the campus. I had the opportunity to see the lecture rooms, to pick a seat, my favourite seat, all these kind of things, meet the team well in advance of actually starting at the university. Planning went right down to like the car journey, and even now that I've moved house, I still go back to where I used to live so I could take that same familiar route to get there. But all those things really helped make the transition as smooth as possible. I was quite anxious about leaving the familiarity of the school environment, so before I left, my Senko at the time helped me go around the school and take lots of photos of the staff. Some of the staff wrote me letters, so that once I had transitioned to university, if I ever felt that I needed that familiarity of school again but couldn't get there, I had all these folders of pictures and notes and things that made me feel closer to where I'd left.
Oh, that's amazing. That actually sounds like the Brain in Hand app, but in a physical form.
Yeah.
So some people may prefer things in a really physical folder to carry around with them. Those are lovely examples.
I think the interesting thing here, I think maybe the key thing is reach out. Do you know what I mean? Mm. I mean, obviously, you're paying you're a student, you're paying this big fee. You know, don't feel that you can't therefore reach out and try and get the support and assistance with the transition. You know, I have a lot of students at my university who talk to me about the struggles they're encountering, and I always say to them, you know, it's great that you're talking to me about this now, but you know, try and be a little bit proactive as well. You know, don't try not to be reactive, but instead be proactive. And I think this is what we're talking about now, isn't it? So reach out and try and identify what kinds of systems and structures and processes are going to help you prevent the issues build up, rather than wait for the issues to build up and then seek support. I think that's the crucial thing. And the other thing that's coming out is there's so many different types of support, isn't there? I mean, there's so many things that you did, you know, getting photographs and identifying your seat and just experiencing it. It's just, you know, so many things. Yeah,
I think universities are really keen to help students actually transition. And I remember when I first had to go for my assessment of what things I might need, and I was a bit like, I don't really think I need that. And they said, well, I take it anyway. You never know, it might help. So they're really keen to kind of put as much support in place, which I guess for some people coming from a school system, they may not be used to that. They might be more used to kind of having to fight for things to be put in place. And it was definitely eye-opening going to university and seeing that it's a much more kind of welcoming environment.
That's interesting. Thanks, Sophia, because I'm just thinking about from a parent's point of view, if my young person's thinking about going to college or university, what we'd be looking for in terms of good supportive environment. And I'm thinking of more sensory needs. So if you could just let us know a bit about that.
I guess I would be thinking about, again, really visiting and going to open days or any kind of access to actually seeing the physical environment to begin with. And then looking at, are there quiet spaces? Are there chill out spaces, which are different than quiet spaces? A lot of universities are starting to have chill out spaces with kind of sensory toys, sensory equipment, rooms that you can actually put a notice up and say, I'm using this room for an hour, so don't come in. So this is what kind of the research that I've seen is showing that there's much more kind of awareness of those spaces that people need maybe in between classes. So, and, you know, is the campus itself peaceful, or is it packed full of people all of the time? You know, so I would be looking at that. I mean, one of the things that we're looking at doing at the University of Hertfordshire is normalizing sensory equipment. So we're going to be using it in class all the time, so that it just becomes, you know, if you come in, there's a box of sensory equipment, you would just choose something. So it just becomes, you know, sensory regulation just becomes normalized. So those are kind of a few things I would be really looking at. Sophia, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. At the University of Hertfordshire, there's the private study spaces in the library that can be booked out if people wanted to kind of get away. But I think the campus being so much bigger than school in and of itself is kind of helpful, because I remember being in school and there being so many people cramped into the corridors, and actually walking from one class to another at the university, and sometimes it was just me or one other person. So I enjoyed the kind of extra space. I know a lot of people kind of use music to regulate, but loads of students are walking around with headphones on, so there's so many things that just you can do to sort of self-manage that are kind of typical things that students are doing anyway.
Right, so thank you so much, both of you. Really interesting conversation. I think it's great, by the way, that there's a push for normalisation for sensory equipment, because you don't want to sort of stigmatise the use of that. You know, if you normalise it, then, you know, people are going to benefit from that, and even non-autistic people might access that and find that useful, you know. So I think that's particularly fantastic. A reminder that you can text us at 0737 661 1033. Any questions or points of view that you'd like to share, we're here and ready to take that on, so please do send that through. That'd be fantastic. We are talking today on All About Autism, about inclusion and accessibility in further education for autistic students, and we have in the studio the wonderful Kathleen Tripp from the University of Hertfordshire. So we've been talking about transition and how to support autistic students entering university settings. So now let's talk about how many students in the university population perhaps might be autistic. I mean, what proportion of students in universities in the UK do you think might be autistic, Kathleen?
Well, statistics are always a little bit difficult, but we've just found some information that says approximately 2.4% of the UK student population are diagnosed with autism, which is what we think is roughly kind of about the same as the general population. So, and another statistic that we've just looked at, or a little bit of information that I think is really promising, is that over the kind of past 7 or 8 years, there's been a massive increase in autistic students attending higher education, going to university. Over 100% increase over the past 7 or 8 years. So I think what we're seeing, and I'm certainly seeing this, you know, firsthand, is that a lot of university students are autistic or are not neurodivergent in some way, and that they are entitled to support, and they really should be welcomed in any university in line with the kind of the duty of the Equality Act.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned the Equality Act, because, of course, universities have a legal obligation to provide fully accessible spaces for autistic people, and they shouldn't be disadvantaged in any way. And it's good to hear that, you know, there's a substantial year-on-year increase in the number of disclosed diagnoses that students are stating. So that's really good to hear. So fantastic. And what about staff? Are there many autistic staff, would you say? Is there anything in the statistics about that?
I'm sure that there are. I was just looking at the University of Hertfordshire's statistics. I mean, anybody could look at the Equality and Diversity report, and actually only 0.7% of the academic staff at the University of Hertfordshire would identify as having a social communication or as autistic. So that's a real underestimation if we're looking at in relation to the general public. And I think hidden disabilities are really tricky. So one of the things that is happening at the University of Hertfordshire is that there is a real push to wear the DAISY lanyard for hidden disabilities, so for staff and students. So students see that staff are wearing that and being quite open about their disabilities, then that's a really, really important role model. And I think that one of the things that I've also found in my research is that lecturers really do want students to disclose. However, they don't necessarily trust their colleagues to handle this in a sensitive way. So, you know, this idea that students are going to come up to you after your first lecture and disclose to you is kind of a little bit, it's a bit ridiculous, because I think that the level of stigma and shame and bad educational experiences that a lot of students arrive with is going to prevent them from wanting to disclose. So I think this is why I'm really, really passionate and interested in an inclusive design of teaching alongside individual supports that's all about strengths and needs rather than necessitating some sort of diagnosis or disclosure, because that's a very personal thing. And if you design things from the outset, then people don't have to go around and ask for accommodations. They're already kind of integrated into the way that you teach. And I think that's the way a lot of teaching is going in general, but certainly on a university level. Sophia, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the issue surrounding disclosing a disability or condition is quite complex for many reasons. And I remember having my study needs agreement, which at the university is kind of a list of your needs and what things are in place, and that would get sent out to all the lecturers and staff before I joined, but I would still have to go and identify myself to them because they wouldn't necessarily know that I am the person in the study needs agreement. And I imagine, well, for me anyway, it would have been nice if there were some lecturers who are neurodivergent who were happy to share that. It would have made me feel that I could approach them, or just that actually I could manage university and go into academia and do the next steps, knowing that this person has always also been able to do so.
Really interesting, yeah.
I was also thinking about non-verbal students and the support and the guidance that they receive. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, there's been lots of interesting cases, I think, in the US. I don't know why, just within the past year or two, there seems to be a variety of nonverbal students who have graduated from university. So there was 2 students at Berkeley, which is, you know, has a very esteemed reputation. Jordan Zimmerman, she's really, really powerful kind of autistic advocate. And all of these people are minimally verbal and went to university and have graduated. And I think Elizabeth Bonker, I think she actually did her her leaving speech with her, she had a speaking aid, so it was all done through her iPad app. So I think there's really, really amazing things that are happening for our minimally verbal and non-verbal students and children, and we're finding really that there's not necessarily a higher incidence of learning difficulties with this population. So therefore, really, they should be accessing university. And, you know, communication, finding a way to communicate is such a priority for these, you know, children and young people, to make sure that they do have those opportunities.
Thank you. That's really helpful, because we just think about the traditional way of talking and finding that way of just accessing what you need, but there is a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of interesting things about, you know, nonverbal people designing their own communication boards, because the way that their communication boards are designed for them is kind of inherently ableist and not in making them conform. So they need to design their own communication boards to suit their own communication style, which I think is incredibly beautiful and
Kathleen,
interesting.
You said, something about ableist. What's that?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so if you think of something being racist or sexist, ableist is the kind of terminology when you're talking about basically, you know, persecuting somebody who is disabled. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And would you mind also just explaining what a communication board is for our listeners?
Yeah, so a communication board can be in a variety of different formats. So you can have it as a physical board with visual cards, you know, where a child can have a picture of a biscuit, sorry, a biscuit or crisps or an apple, and the child can give you the physical card with the apple on it, so that you give them that apple, so they can communicate with simple, you know, actual pieces of laminated card, all the way up to more high-tech kind of communication aids, which there's lots and lots of them that you can get on the iPad now. It's amazing. So you can take photos, you can have pictures, or you can just have words or ways of kind of spelling out things to support children and young people to be able to communicate in their own way. And it's really interesting because a lot of these children may have maybe dyspraxic as well. So by dyspraxic, may have some problems with their fine motor difficulty, with fine motor. So getting a communication board that will work with the fine motor difficulties in combination with where that student is kind of an interesting combination. But there's so many things that are happening. I find it a really exciting area that people are really developing.
That's great. Thank you.
It's funny that you said cookie and not biscuit, but however, to be fair to you, I noticed you said crisps and not chips.
I did. So I'm bilingual. I'm very bilingual.
Credit where it's due. Credit where it's due. No, but that's great, isn't it? That there are these communication aids and technologies that are there to potentially bridge the communication and support such students. And, you know, we have to do that if we want an equal and equitable learning environment. You know, it shouldn't be that just because you're non-verbal or you struggle with traditional verbal communication that you can't access in the same way a fair education, particularly within universities that are, you know, principally about, you know, education for all, really.
Absolutely.
So that's really, really good. And I think this discussion just underlines the fact that ultimately, you know, autistic people, whether you're verbal or non-verbal, can indeed go to university and be successful, right?
Absolutely. And it's about really exploiting the strength. You know, I think maybe, Sophia, you could probably talk about your strengths rather than, you know, this kind of deficit-based way that we're often looking at things is so wrong. We need to turn this around. I mean, a lot of autistic researchers, their attention to detail, their ability to concentrate for long periods of time is something that is fantastic and could be absolutely exploited and used in an academic environment really, really well.
Yeah, university has been great for me in terms of being able to have that one topic that I just pour everything into. And like you say, the attention to detail and being able to focus and really kind of dig deep into the research, sometimes going down like sort of rabbit holes. But in order to get to that point, I think there was like quite a few sort of accommodations that had to be put in place to help. So I remember one of my biggest anxieties about university was travelling there because I wasn't ready to learn how to drive. I wasn't able to use public transport, but as part of my disabled students allowance, I was given the opportunity to go by taxi, and that was part funded by the university. I also had concerns about maybe getting anxious during lectures and having to leave, so I was given a voice recorder so that I wouldn't miss anything, so that alleviated a lot of the anxiety in and of itself. Things like having my seat. I know, like, at that age most people just sit wherever, but people came to know that that was my seat, and for me, if I didn't have that seat, it just would have meant that I wouldn't have been able to go in. So although it made no difference necessarily to everybody else, it was a big thing for me and helped me be able to access the lectures and be in the same space as everyone else. And just knowing that I could leave if I needed to often meant that I didn't, because I had the choice and the things put in place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that kind of highlights a few things that I was thinking about in terms of, I know that I go on and on, Ellie, about special interests all the time. That using special interests for autistic children and autistic people really fits in with the kind of the kind of neurology, and that I've met a lot of autistic people who, when they go to university, it's an absolute joy because they get to focus on the thing that they love for the first time in their life. They're not distracted by things that other people want them to do. So I think that in some senses, some autistic people really thrive in that environment where you just get to not worry about PE anymore and not worry about your handwriting or not worry about those things that you were kind of forced to do in your previous schooling.
Yeah, I also really benefited from like the structure of a university course, so having set modules and set assignments and due dates and deadlines really helped me be able to kind of prioritize what came first. I just enjoy having a deadline, so that helped.
Interesting. Yeah. I think those kind of the visual structure, I think now of universities is quite common because everything is on a learning environment, an electronic learning environment, no matter where you're going to university. So things are structured quite visually. And I would say most universities by design should be recording their lectures and also posting their lectures 24 hours in advance so that people can see what they are going to learn, to be able to pre-learn. So this is what I'm talking about, kind of learning by design, the teaching by design, rather than you having to ask for recording. If everything was being recorded, then that would even lessen your anxiety even more. I would hope, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's become much more common after COVID as well, the recording of lectures and the posting of lectures in advance. But definitely to other students, they may not even notice that that's a thing that's being done, but there will be students in that class that really are benefiting from having that without having to ask for it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gosh, it's a far cry from when I went to uni. It was just get on with it.
Same.
Go to the library and study. That's it.
Here's the pigeonhole for you to submit your essay.
That's it.
That's it, you know.
That's it. Just get it done.
Nothing digital or anything like that. Yeah.
No,
it's good though, isn't it? That things have moved on and, you know, there's technology now and learning in place.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, really good. Again, a reminder that if you'd like to share anything with us, a story, an opinion, a question, please do text it through to 0737 661 1033. That's 0737 661 1033. Okay, welcome back to All About Autism. So this episode we're talking about inclusion and accessibility in further education, in particular universities, and we have the wonderful Kathleen Tripp from the University of Hertfordshire sharing all of her wisdom with us. And on that note, Kathleen, I wonder whether you may be able to give us 5 of your top tips for anyone thinking about further study, including university study.
I guess the first thing that I would say is that you are absolutely entitled to go to university, and you are entitled to support at university. This is not a favor or a goodwill or anything that somebody's being nice and doing something nice for you. You're absolutely entitled to this. And you're entitled to specific disability support. So I think the first thing I would do is call or email the disability support team of whatever university you are interested in, and get a feel for how they can support you. Although I would say that I think this is fairly uniform in terms of what universities are supposed to be offering you. And then, as I said, go to Explore Taster Days or Open Days and find a named person and contact them directly. So you can call them or email them and ask loads and loads of questions. And I would ask questions about the following. I would ask about personalized and individualized support. So what do they offer in terms of academic support? This is often called student support, or a student support team. What do they offer in terms of that? Do they have peer mentoring? Do they have peer support? Do they have social support?
So what is peer support? What is peer mentoring and peer support?
So peer mentoring and peer support is a really interesting thing that I was looking at in my research. I found some really interesting studies. So that would be usually by somebody who's maybe a year or two older than you on your course. They may not even be on your particular course, but they would be an older student who can meet with you socially, talk about the kind of the hidden aspects of university, about maybe where you would go to have a coffee, how you would go to a nightclub, all of these kind of hidden things that people just join into that you may want to do with a peer rather than a member of staff. So I think that's been hugely successful with a lot of autistic students. And this is an area where I think that if there's a lot of individual or personal support, then you don't have to worry about your disclosure. You don't have to worry about your disability team. If you're accessing a program that is going to support you in whatever needs you have, then they're going to be looking at your strengths and needs, and not kind of gearing everything towards your deficits. So that's one of my kind of key areas. Again, like Ellie was asking about the environment, look at that physical environment. Look at what the library is like. Look at the quiet spaces, the chill out spaces. Is it a really busy campus that's really compressed, or is it a campus that has lots of green space where you feel relaxed? And look at the classrooms. I know that there are a lot of classrooms who have terrible lighting, that are really, really very oppressive. Actually go to the detail of looking at what the classrooms are like.
Just to that point about classroom experience, I know one of our autistic trustees, James Gordon, who's been on the show previously and helps us with editorial input in the show, he's told me previously that he sometimes struggled to cope with loud microphones, for the lectures. If they use a microphone, it's an echoey room, and that alone can just throw particular students off. Do you experience some of that those sorts of issues?
Yeah, especially the big lecture theatres were really echoey, and if I really couldn't manage, then I was lucky I had my recorder. I'd leave it on the table, I'd go and catch up on it later. But ideally it would have been perfect if it wasn't so kind of overwhelming that I couldn't access that space. But I kind of worked ways around being able to manage it at the time.
Yeah, because the realities are that a lot of these lecture theatres are very large, sort of scary spaces with a lot of sensory things going on, including visually and audio wise. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I would be looking at then, that kind of brings me to my final point about, is there just inclusive teaching on the program you're interested in? So, our lecturers and looking just at strengths and needs of everybody. Are people encouraged to take a break if they would like to? I mean, that's something it seems so simple, but, everybody's entitled to just walk out of the room if they need some sort of break. Is that kind of a relaxed atmosphere? Is that encouraged? Is the program, are they really discussing absolutely clearly about their inclusive attitudes and their inclusive teaching at the beginning? Because so that's
I found it easier when the lecturers kind of included the breaks as part of the lecture, because I didn't want to be the person to get up and walk out in front of everybody. So I had some lecturers that would kind of have those breaks already added in, so then we all had a break and it felt much more kind of natural.
Absolutely, yeah. Having those a very clear outline and agenda of visual agenda, I think would be. I think that would just be standard, good, inclusive practice.
And knowing that a break's coming up.
Absolutely,
I think
yeah.
Can I just also add one thing? At my university, I'm sure that all universities have this, but we have course reps. Right, so we have students who are appointed, 2 or 3 students are appointed as the sort of representative people of the wider student body in the course. And I think this is a good resource to access if you're struggling or you need extra support or you want to influence how things are done. Find out who the course reps are, go and sort of interact with them, or perhaps even consider yourself becoming a course rep. Universities do encourage diversity in access, so that's one space that you can maybe make a difference.
Yeah, and just to add to that point, I think if you're a young autistic person who's had a bad experience at school or is having a bad experience at school, I hope that doesn't put you off going into further education, because I know so many young autistic people that have found school so difficult that they don't even want to consider doing the next step. They don't want to go to college, they don't want to go to university, but actually there is so much support available. It's just about knowing how to access it and being able to get your needs met and do what you want to do.
That's such a good point, isn't it? Don't let the bad experience put you off.
Yeah, it's tricky, but hopefully with more autistic people kind of openly being autistic at university, it will encourage the next generation to think, actually, I can do this because this person's done it, and I know that I need this, and they'll get there.
Yeah, and also not just knowing that other autistic students are there, but also knowing that this is an autistic friendly environment, and to your point, Kathleen, that the courses and the teaching approaches have been designed from the bottom up to support autistic and neurodivergent people. So it really is, as good as we can hope for an accessible and accommodating place. So, ultimately, if you have had a bad prior experience, it doesn't mean to say you're going to have another one going forwards. So there's a lot of hope. And was that the case for you, Sophia? Did you find university a bit more sort of accessible and a better overall experience than schooling previously?
Yeah, I think because I wasn't diagnosed until I was about 16, the biggest part of my schooling was struggling. But then kind of having that diagnosis and then all the transition support and then actually getting there, it felt like something that I could do, whereas at school I couldn't imagine that it would have been possible. It just didn't seem like I was going to manage it. So it did take a lot of planning and a lot of effort and a lot of support from my mum and encouragement from teachers and things. But yeah, it can be done.
We'll have to get your mum in the studio one day, right? Yeah. Just going back to university for the moment, I mean, have you come across yourself any autistic staff? Have you seen any or come across any?
No, I haven't come across any
isn't
staff that have said that they're autistic. I've met 1 or 2 other autistic students, which has been nice, because when I first started I didn't know anybody else that was autistic. But yeah, no staff that have said, oh, I'm neurodivergent or...
That's a bit of a shame. Hopefully that will change, as we were talking about previously with statistics, because that would again also make you feel...
I think that would be really helpful to upcoming students to know that there's neurodivergent staff there as well, who really kind of get it from the lived experience point of view as well as the academic side of things.
I wonder whether some staff who are, because of course it must be that a reasonable proportion of the staff are autistic, because we know that from the statistics that about 1 to 2%, maybe more of that in the general population are autistic. So it must be that some staff are similarly at that rate autistic, but they're just not disclosing. And I wonder whether or not, that might just be because staff perhaps don't feel that they're going to be listened to, or they're going to be valued, or they're going to be rejected, and that is a bit of a worry, isn't it? I think going forwards, if universities really want to up their game, what they should perhaps consider doing is bringing in autistic people themselves to train and level up the culture within the university and the way that they do things. You know, actual autistic-led training and education can make a big difference. And then if autistic staff see this and you know, presumably then value it, they may feel a bit more open to disclose, and then that will lead to other students feeling that they can perhaps disclose themselves or get further support. So it's a bit of a sort of rolling ball, isn't it?
Yeah, it could only have a positive impact. Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, we've got to get more autistic-led training. A lot of these trainings that I've seen before are not really autistic-led, are they? They're and that's a bit of a problem. We've got to value that. What do you think, Ellie?
Yeah, no, it's all about representation. If you see someone doing something that you think that was out of your reach, as Sophia was saying, that should probably you thought that it wasn't a possibility of going to university, then you know, having someone there already doing the work is really encouraging. And absolutely, we need more people to be talking about it, and more conversations had.
Great. Sophia, you've got a question here, I think.
Yeah, Kathleen, if I could ask you to reflect on your journey, what would you have done differently? What were the positives, and what more can be done to support the learner's experience?
Okay, that is a really tough question, because I would have probably done most things differently. I think when you've been in a field a long time, especially this field, things have changed so dramatically. And I just wished that I knew so many things that I know now. The first thing that I never studied about at university, or no one ever discussed for about the first 20 years I was teaching, was sensory issues. This is such a hugely impactful thing that I think really needs to be understood, because before you even begin to think about learning or engagement, because it's so strongly linked to anxiety. And if you can't decrease that anxiety, then how are you going to learn anything? And that sensory experience is such an impactful thing. I know it can be a beautiful thing. I know a lot of people have really beautiful, amazing sensory experiences, but it is so impactful. And it was really interesting. You said something earlier, Sophia, about the importance of escape. One of my autistic colleagues, she said that to me once. She says, if I know I don't have to do it, then this actually increases my ability to actually do it. So offering that escape, that you feel anybody, that an autistic child or student feels that they can leave the room at any time, increases their ability to actually engage or do what they're actually going to do. So I think that's kind of like a really amazing nugget that I had, that I keep in my mind all of the time, about always trying to decrease anxiety. And then I guess there's another thing, thinking about, one of the beautiful things that I've been able to do in my new job as a lecturer is I get to study, and I really like to read a lot of research, mostly done by autistic academics. And I just really realized that most of the stereotypes that I have about autistic people have been totally wrong. So I would just really encourage people to kind of lose any kind of negative stereotype, because actually a lot of really interesting research I'm looking at is that actually autistic people are hyper empathic. So that means that they are super empathic, so more empathic, where there was that stereotype previously that they were not, that autistic people didn't have empathy. So I think that's a really important example, I think, about these kind of negative things that we didn't understand at all. So I guess I would just say, listen to autistic people, listen to autistic children. No one knows better what's going on for them than they do. So, and do you mind, Ellie, if I ask you? I mean, your son comes up with the most beautiful ways of expressing his feelings and emotions in such a unique way that is so insightful. I absolutely love it. Do you mind?
There's so many. I'm just trying to think of one. When he's struggling to go to school, he he might say that he's experiencing technical difficulties. So, and also the page isn't found. So, the way that he communicates that is through the technology of not being able to process what he's feeling, or letting us know that actually he's finding it really difficult. And he needs help with. So when you talk about really listening and honing in into what they're saying and finding the meaning, it's amazing. So there's so many of those small clues that they give you that you think, oh, that's really clever.
Yeah, he had an interesting one about when his heart was beating really fast and he was anxious.
Oh yeah, what did he say? I can't remember now.
I can't remember either. But he described it in such a way, and I just thought that's really amazing to hear him say it like that.
He's very descriptive in his language.
Yeah.
But it's just trying to hone in on what it is he's actually saying and feeling. So, yeah.
I love that kind of, again, is kind of bunking against that stereotype that, you know, that autistic people don't have emotions or don't experience their emotions, where he comes up with these just incredibly insightful ways of expressing his emotions, where I just find it really, really fascinating. So, yeah, thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Okay.
Kathleen, how can listeners get in touch with you?
I think probably the best way is LinkedIn, because I think I'm now connected. I'm connected with you just for today, Sophia. And I think I'm connected with all of you on LinkedIn. So if any of your listeners are already connected to you, then will find me.
Fantastic. So, just search for Kathleen Tripp, TRIPP.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's a wrap for today's show. Our next show will take place on the 1st of June at 7 p.m, which, as always, is the first Thursday of the month. I'd also like to remind you to pop into one of our charity community cafes to meet the community if you wish to find support and connect with others. Currently, we have community cafes in Southgate, Wood Green, Islington and Ealing, and we're about to open one in Woodford. We also have plans to launch other schemes in the future, including in Borough, Lewisham and Camden. All the information about these community cafes and how else the charity can support you can be found on our website, which is londonautismgroupcharity.org. That's londonautismgroupcharity.org. We're also available for mental health support, advocacy support, and much more. Thanks again to my co-hosts Sophia and Ellie. And it's been great also having you in the studio, Kathleen. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And also, thank you to the amazing Tony Neofidel for helping us with everything in the background, James Gordon for his editorial input and expertise, and of course all of you lovely listeners. Thank you very much and have a good month.
Bye.
On FM, on digital radio, on your mobile and online. This is London Greek Radio.